US President Donald Trump has announced more tariffs, stepping up US trade pressure. Trump signed orders reinstating 25% tariffs on steel imports from all countries. He has also raised aluminium tariffs from 10 to 25%. The tariffs will come into effect on March the 4th.
Protecting our steel and aluminum industries is a must, and today I'm simplifying our tariffs on steel and aluminum so that everyone can understand exactly what it means. It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions, and that's all countries, no matter where it comes from, all countries. If made in the United States, however, United States of America, there is no tariff, zero. So if it's made in the United States, there is no tariff. All you have to do is make it in the United States. We don't need it from another country.
DW correspondent Benjamin Alvarez Gruber joins us from Washington, D.C. Ben, it's a significant hit for imported steel and aluminium. What more do we know about this latest executive order?
That's right. President Trump signed 2 proclamations, 2 executive orders saying that the United States will impose this 25% tariff on all steel and aluminium imports. This is not the first time that he pushes ahead with tariffs on foreign steel and aluminium globally. During his first term, he also did it, angering allies like Mexico, like Canada, and also like the European Union. What the White House is now saying is that this new proclamation will take effect on March 4th, but these new tariffs would indeed once again hit allies, as the 4 biggest sources of steel imports are Canada, Brazil, Mexico, and South Korea. And even though Trump claims that there would be no exemptions or exceptions, we just heard him there might be one already coming up, as Trump spoke to Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese before he announced his tariffs in the Oval Office, and said that he would give great consideration to Australia's request for an exemption to the steel tariff. So we can imagine that there will be more conversations happening after this announcement.
So maybe an asterisk there. Trump has been selling the idea of these tariffs, Benjamin, as an attempt to level the playing field for US industries. Does everyone agree this will be a simple blanket victory for American producers?
That's indeed how the White House has been trying to sell this idea. A senior official claimed that foreign governments have far too long subsidized their steel and aluminium industry while flooding, as they say, the U.S. market with underpriced imports. So now these tariffs 2.0, as these officials call them, are there to ensure that producers in the U.S. can compete, what they say, on a level playing field once again. And American steelmakers welcomed these tariffs. That's no surprise. The president of the American Iron and Steel Institute welcomed this. He said that this shows continued commitment, as he calls it, to a strong American steel industry. And on the other hand, we have, of course, the U.S. trade partners who warned that these new barriers would hurt, for example, automakers, shipbuilders, and other industries in the United States. It remains to be seen if the White House pushes ahead with this implementation or postpones them, as they did, for example, with the tariffs that they announced on Mexico and Canada. They have been postponed until March 1st.
A busy time in Washington, D.C. Benjamin Alvarez Gruber, thank you.
US President Donald Trump says he plans to introduce 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminium entering the United States. The measures are expected to hit the United States' neighbours hardest. The largest sources of US steel imports are Canada, Brazil and Mexico. Canada is by far the largest supplier of aluminium. Now, tariffs are taxes charged on goods imported from other countries, and Trump is making good on an election promise by imposing them. He said tariffs will raise revenue, boost US manufacturing and protect American jobs. He also says he intends to use them as leverage to stem irregular migration and drugs. Last week, he announced tariffs of 25% on Canada and Mexico and 10% on China. He later backtracked on the levies on Canada and Mexico after they agreed to boost border security. Now, Beijing responded with a raft of its own tit-for-tat tariffs, which come into force today. The measures include a 15% levy on certain types of coal and liquefied natural gas, a 10% tariff on crude oil, farm equipment, and some vehicles. The US biotechnology company Illumina has been added to Beijing's so-called unreliable entity list, as has the fashion group that owns Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. And China has announced that it will launch an antitrust investigation into the US tech giant. Abigail Hall Blanco is an associate professor of economics at the University of Tampa in Florida. Welcome to the day. Thanks so much for your time. Some analysts are saying that tariffs are bad for all parties. Can I ask your opinion? I mean, can there be any winners by imposing tariffs?
As an economist, the literature on this is abundantly clear. The analysts are right. Tariffs are major losses, primarily for all parties involved. Now, with any economic policy, you do have winners and losers from that policy. In this context, if we take the perspective of the United States, something like, as anticipated today, the president's going to announce tariffs on aluminum and steel, U.S. aluminum and steel producers will win. But those gains are not at all anywhere close to the welfare and income losses that are going to be seen as a net result of the tariffs.
So these tariffs are going to make products more expensive in the US and they're going to drive up inflation.
They will absolutely make products in the US more expensive. The example that I use with my students is this. We often import steel from places like China onto the west coast of the United States. Why? Because it's cheaper to import Chinese steel than it is to take steel from the east coast of the United States and transport it to the west coast. So this is absolutely going to drive up prices on goods and services that contain these foreign goods.
Stock markets appear to be taking this in their stride. They haven't reacted with a sell-off. Are traders wrong to think that there's little risk that this won't escalate into an all-out trade war?
It's always difficult to know precisely how markets are going to respond to different news. It might be that investors are anticipating that something like what happened last week, again, that there will be some kind of temporary pause to these tariffs. It's unclear exactly what it is that investors are thinking, but in the long run, there's absolutely no question that these policies are detrimental not only to foreign economies, but to the U.S. economy as well.
Now, the country first in line to be affected by this is Canada, which supplies most of the US's imported steel. What will these tariffs do to that trading relationship in particular?
Undoubtedly, it's going to damage trade relationships. One thing that has come out of the last 10 days of policy is this real uncertainty now surrounding the United States as a trade partner. It used to be that countries like Canada, like Mexico, could be reasonably well assured that the U.S. was going to be a faithful, stable trading partner. And now that's no longer clearly the case. And so you see effects among the Canadian government who had planned to implement retaliatory tariffs. You had the Mexican government that was saying something similar. And now you're also seeing similar moves in the European Union who are talking about, hey, if we're going to be impacted by these tariffs, guess what? We're going to impose them too.
Trump has made various claims about why he wants tariffs, from stopping fentanyl coming into the US, protecting US jobs, national security. What is Trump's main goal, do you think, by using these tariffs?
That's really an excellent question. And frankly, it's difficult to tell at this point precisely what the overarching point is. You mentioned a few of the rationales that the president has offered previously, but really, in my mind, this appears to be a flexation or a demonstration of power on the part of Trump. So he's looking at all of these various countries around the world saying, look at how strong our economy is, or look at how much power that I have, that we can impose all of these types of policies. And it's truly unfortunate because at the end of the day, the people who are going to be damaged the most, who are going to feel the most pain from these policies, are your everyday people in countries all around the world. And these economic costs are human cost at the end of the day.
Some analysts are suggesting a knock-on effect of Trump's tariff policy will be that countries rethink their trading relationship with the US. You touched on it earlier, and that they'll look elsewhere for more reliable markets. Is that a likely scenario that we're looking at?
I think that certainly could be the case. The U.S. has a history of imposing tariff policies. In fact, you can find the multiple thousands of page documents of the tariff schedule of the United States. Other countries certainly have them too. But given the uncertainty now surrounding U.S. trade policy, it would not surprise me at all if many places look to rethink or to diversify their trading partners in an attempt to avoid these types of tariffs. It also wouldn't surprise me if you start to see an uptick in black market activity in particular markets as a mechanism for avoiding the tariffs.
Abigail Hall Blanco from the University of Tampa in Florida. Abigail, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.